Okay, this is directed, and I think it was written by Jeb Stewart, who also did Die Hard, who wrote Next to Kin, and The Fugitive.
Yeah.
Jeb Stewart's also a good writer, and he has some good tips. If you listen now, you can get them. Number one, when you're writing, look up for personal, relatable problems in your character. Changes in masculinities.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Write a lot about jokes. Develop your supporting characters. Plan out your story, and know location details. Now, if you know all that, you know exactly where he's coming from when he wrote Die Hard and Switchback.
Yeah. And I can also name a lot of things he did wrong with today's movie.
His Fugitive's all about masculinity, too. So, right, yeah, all the things about this movie, too.
Yeah, so let's talk Switchback from 1997, a film that took many, many years to come out, and we'll decide if that wait was worth it. And welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick Palodichuk, and welcome back. Thanks for watching. Thanks for finding us. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show and follow the show. You can also, follow the show. I said that already. On Twitter and on Instagram. And check out the Patreon for some great deals. Today we're going to talk about another film from 1997. And it takes place in the winter, so what the heck?
Yeah, seems like good enough time as any.
Yeah.
Switchback.
Yeah.
FBI agent Frank LaCrosse has arrived in Amarillo hunting for a clever serial killer, but he finds himself in the middle of a political spat between the local sheriff and his election competitor. As LaCrosse continues to chase this elusive killer, Sheriff Olmsted begins to notice that LaCrosse is just being toyed with.
Okay, so this is really interesting about the crew of this movie. Is you have editor, which is Conrad Buff, who also did like Empire Strikes Back, Ghostbusters, E.T., Poltergeist, Return of the Jedi, Spaceballs,
Titanic, the very same year.
Titanic. I think he won for Titanic. We already talked about LA Confidential did get editing. Yep. He got it probably because of his great long career. You also have great producer Gail Ann Hurd, who also did like Aliens 2. She used to be married to James Cameron. She worked with Roger Corman. That's how she got her start. And Roger Corman's like, you're one of the best executive producers ever.
Yeah.
And she definitely proved it as well. And then you have cinematographer Oliver Wood, who's done a bunch of Will Ferrell movies. But it also, which is interesting, is he's a cinematographer for the movie Morbius with Jared Leto as the lead. So he's doing
What's Morbius? Is that a movie that's coming out anytime?
Yeah, remember they shelved it, now it's coming out, and shelved it, now
it's
coming
not
out.
Ever coming out, Nick.
It's not ever coming out. So, interesting about the crew. Now let's talk about...
All right. I'm gonna give my one-word review of this movie from the voice of a dog.
Yeah.
Woof. Now, that being said, there are things I liked about it. I'm going to start with some of the stuff I liked about it. I will defend to the death Dennis Quaid in this movie. A lot of people didn't like him. They said he was too dour. But let me say this.
He is kind of dour.
He's very dour, and that's kind of the point. And that's why the first hour of the movie doesn't introduce him to us as our protagonist yet. We are introduced to R. Lee Ermey as our sheriff, who we believe is going to be our protagonist throughout the film, right?
Yeah.
And LaCrosse comes in, and then it's basically how Dennis Quaid's character is perceived by the people around him that builds his character.
Yes.
And when you find out why he is so dedicated to taking out this killer, you can understand why he's cold-blooded and he's just moving.
He's disfocused.
And so I don't think he was that bad in the movie. He's not winning any awards with it, but I think a lot of people hated on his performance.
No, but it's almost like he's trying to hold a pearl with his butt cheeks.
Yeah, and he might have been. The Quaid guys are weird, man. You know his brother? Come on.
But I do like the beginning of this movie. It's very much like a horror movie. I do kind of like that.
Yeah.
I kind of like the flavor of that. I don't know. It's one of those like night watch, but the beginning of that movie is awful. Over the murder on the slab. But here it's very tantalizing, almost like a slasher movie.
I'm a little confused about the opening.
And
what I say about that is
because where we go,
the guy that answers or that's at the door, he's not involved. He just happens to be there.
Yeah, that's a switcheroo.
Yeah, but are we meant to think that he just happened to be there, or are we meant to think he was somehow involved?
I don't want to explain it if you haven't seen it yet.
It's very confusing.
Yeah.
And the thing I liked about it is he's the guy who makes a bunch of noise when he walks around. He's the Seidler from Seinfeld. But anyway, what's funny about the movie is that it feels like the first half hour of this movie was involved the screenwriter Jeb Stewart. He wrote this great opening scene. Killer comes in and then he hit his head and he forgot what movie he was writing. And so then he started writing a different movie about a like election.
He didn't put that in his
And then
notes.
he hit his head, and he was like, "What movie am I writing? Oh, it's about a serial killer being hunted by the FBI." And then it's like he started 3 different movies because they're drastically different scenes that don't feel like they have any connection at all. And then he's like, "Oh, I'm writing a movie about a road trip. I'm gonna have Jared Leto and
So
like
it's a great title for this movie.
yeah, because he seemed like he switched
switching
back
back.
and forth between movie ideas for about a half hour, and then he was like found a way to combine them all into a very convoluted mess.
It is convoluted mess, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in fact, it wants you almost to be a convoluted mess. Like, who is the killer? That's the entire. It could be Jared Leto or Danny Glover.
I think that's the strength of the whole movie is that they give us the killer, but we don't know which one. We know that it's somebody involved in this movie, and my ability to be uncertain about it moves around a lot.
When we talk about Braid, when it's convoluted, it doesn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with this movie, you had to keep it going because when you reveal the killer too early. So what happens is when you reveal the killer too early, you got to go gaudy and you got to do intense train action, and all that stuff to keep your interest. And so with something like that, you have to keep it tantalizing till the end. And when you reveal it too early, when you finally figure it out, then you have to go action explosions. You have to go like the 80s. You just blow everything up and big stunts and everything. Yeah.
This has a very 90s action, like forward momentum to it, where like some of the scenes in it are like, again, not spoiling, but there's a moment at the end where a character is falling off the train. One of our characters, I won't say who, and just happens to land the way that he lands.
Perfect.
It's like, what is happening
Bullseye.
here?
Go
Like,
win the
come
lottery,
on
man,
now.
if you did that. Yeah.
Go
take your chances on the lottery.
It's just elements like that where like the movie felt like it was searching for realism. And then it hits a certain point where it's like, nah, we're just gonna do this.
Yes.
And it kind of lost me when it changed from the movie that I was watching into the movie it ended up being. And that's the problem. Is the movie is Switchback, and it switches a lot in its style, in its writing, in its directing. And it's so weird to me that Jeb Stewart wrote Die Hard and The Fugitive. He wrote these clean-cut thrillers. And then this was almost like he took all the deleted scenes from those movies and just strung them together. Not entirely the worst movie ever, but like I was like watching, going, what is this?
So I haven't watched this in over, since it probably came out in 97. And I remember Lee Army is really I remember him as really the best part of this movie.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then William Fichtner, we like from he gets shotgun blast from The Dark Knight, and then
He gets everything.
and he's kind of
great.
he's kind of this slimy character that you want to get going. But yeah, the political aspects is not really all that interesting.
Well, it's discarded.
Yeah.
When I really
Subplots
thought
are
it was
just kinda-
meaning something, and where it was like, I liked that it was on the level where he was dealing with the politics of being the sheriff while he was also trying to hunt. Like, I liked that element of it, but it made, as the movie went on, it made me like his character a little less, and then get redemption, which was nice to see, because I think he has probably the best character arc in the movie, is our Sheriff Olmsted, because he at a certain point he realizes it's not about the election. It's not about whether you're winning or losing. There's people lives at stake, and it gives me that sense of like, as a critique of politicians. We have so many politicians, especially today, but even back then, who are so worried about getting reelected that they're not paying attention to what the job is they're doing.
What was the job when you get elected? What is your job?
Yeah.
But I got elected.
Yeah, like killers don't just stop killing when it's election season. Like, oh, they'll let you have a week here, sheriff, so you can run. Like, you've got to focus on the job itself, and I think that's what's at play.
And it's hard, when I talk about when I critique movies, is something in this memorable or something in this unforgettable, and I can't retain, other than Lee Army, there's really nothing that is unforgettable or memorable in this movie because it's all recycled stuff we've seen before.
Yeah.
What they try to do with Danny Glover's character, I don't know if it's the right cast for him. It's almost like you're supposed to eat all this of his sweetness and his overly kindness, and he's very sweet. In fact, he loves candy. That's his crutch, right?
Yeah.
Over his seat. But then his car is the complete opposite. So it's like his character. If you want to write a character, keep it. If we want to be a sweet character, so we have something contrast to that.
Yeah.
Well, keep it sweet, like all the time. Maybe he's got a glove compartment full of candy or something like that, or something. He's got a powerful
Just
sweet.
speaking as the guy with a producer mind right now.
Yeah.
Why would you put naked pictures of women in your car when this movie will eventually play on TV? Because then I got to imagine that there's scenes in this movie where there's just a big blur on the roof, when they're in the car. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But just it's an odd thing to throw in the movie that
Because
doesn't
you take
need to
time
be there.
editing that crap out where you could find some other things you can focus
Yeah,
on.
there's a different character quirk. I guarantee you can find a different character quirk than that. What I find is I'm going to defend Danny Glover
Okay.
because of Lethal Weapon, because of all these other movies where he played the good guy, and then we have to wonder, is he good? And then same with Jared Leto, like, you know, Jared Leto was not the Jared Leto that we know today. He was very much a small, but he seemed a very friendly person. Like, there's a lot of people in this movie that could be the killer, and they're all people that we don't think they could do that. And I like the idea of casting a Jared Leto and a casting a Danny Glover, because then it causes us as viewers to question, could either of these guys be that bad? And so that's why I defend, like, I think the writing is the problem with both of those characters, because Leto's character is very forgettable, and Danny Glover's character is almost overly memorable.
I
where
agree.
he's like, there's just so many weird things written into his character. I don't think it's the performance. I think that performance is
I agree.
quite good.
I
I
agree.
think it's just the
That's
writing.
what I'm
that's
talking
really
about. If
bad.
you're going to do
Yeah.
contrast, if we stick to a
Yeah, and your
particular
point though, the candy versus the nude photos, it's very odd.
Yeah.
And it's like, why are we remembering this? Why is this something we're focused on?
You think if you like candy, you would like plaster famous rappers or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, all of your different candy bars.
Right.
We just saved your movie for television, okay?
Right. But, what I was going to go with, the reason why I want to kind of show this to you is because like Lee Emery is playing the sheriff, kind of like Seven.
Yeah.
Jared Leto does a trach in a bar, almost like when David Duchovny does in Playing God.
That's true. That's
So
true.
there's a lot of things to kind of retain, and Dennis Quaid is I think this is his first time playing a cop guy, but also Lethal Weapon. You like Lethal Weapon, Danny Glover is in this. So there's kind of the three components I wanted to show this movie to you, because I think this movie came out after Playing God, and I saw this movie and it's like, oh my God, he's doing exactly what David Duchovny did, and Playing God is
Oh yeah.
I think the trach and
that was over. This movie came out on Halloween. Like, huh? Like, it's not that much of a horror. Why is it out on Halloween?
I think you should have gone a little more horror with this.
I think it would have been a good transition, because again, we seem to like or find something likable about the actors that we're questioning. So if you went really dark with the actual elements of the horror of the killing, it would make you really, really question who could go that way.
Which you have a really good balance with Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
You have a very heavy political movie,
Yep.
but also a very horrific movie as well.
Yeah, that movie knows the tone really well, and yeah, this is just kind of a lot of very odd choices. And there's things like, you know, our killer who leaves the note for Lacrosse and says, "If you want to find your son, you have to kill me," and I'm like,
Well, then you
that
won't.
doesn't make that is an example of a killer who knows how the movie ends.
Yeah.
That's not a killer
right.
who's like, this killer is not smart enough. As we find out, this killer is not smart enough
And
to
he's
hatch a
supposed-
scheme like that.
That's the other thing I write about the killer is you're supposed to be super clever.
Yeah.
And super navigating everything, and then realize that just doesn't really make sense to what the reveal that we get.
Well, and there's a difference between clever, being able to think a step or two ahead, and being able to plot out the movie. It's that question of, let's compare it to one of the more famous villains, one that we're both aware of, the Joker. The Joker is, he's chaos incarnate. He's always thinking like 10 steps ahead. But the thing is, it's very understandable that he also knows what's going to happen if things don't go well. Like if things go a different direction, he's plotting out every turn.
Like
the killer in this movie has one train of thought where it's just constantly like, you have to kill me to find your son, and I don't buy it at all.
And then the car goes off and it's like, well, if both of you die, then we don't get the answers because we have to figure out one or the other.
Yeah, like we're wondering which one of them is the killer, but then in my head I'm like, well, whichever one dies here is not the killer. Yeah. And then we have this weird scene where they seem to be both worried about each other, so I'm like, well, that's not what a killer would like. It's
the reason why I brought up.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
but the reason why you talked about crew and the directors and cast and everything, because I don't think that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're absolutely right. It's not the cast and the crew, because you got top notch here.
Yeah.
With award-winning directors and producers, and you got a good director-writer, and I think they couldn't tell. You got to finish the writing on this.
Yeah, it felt like deleted scenes from all the other movies jammed together. And let me point out something else, a comparison here with another Jared Leto movie that came out recently that had the same.
Well, it's not Morbius.
No,
it's not Morbius.
Not unless you're watching this episode later. That movie's not coming out. Anyway, The Little Things, which came out last year, was one of those HBO Max theater drops that happened in the beginning with Denzel Washington.
Flew off my radar.
Yeah, it flew in one year and out the other.
All right.
But that movie was written in the 90s, and it finally got made last year. And it felt very much like of the 90s. You know, like it felt like
editing.
Like all the story choices were very like these things happened in movies between the 90s and now this movie feels overly cliche. This movie was written originally, I think, in the 80s.
It looks like an 80s,
And the cast, you can actually look up the casting that they had attached at the time. I think De Niro was attached at one point, and there was a bunch of other cast members that were attached in the 80s when this movie was going to be made. But it feels like a movie that, had it been made in the 80s, might have been a bit more clever, but between when it was written and when it came out, a lot of other movies did the same things this movie did better. And it feels like this is a movie that's time just may have passed, or it maybe needed a couple more drafts. Because you have to update your movie to the time.
Well, it's nice to know because The Fugitive came out before this movie.
Yeah, this must have been a passion project for him.
He must have written this before The Fugitive. And The Fugitive, it seems a little more fleshed out.
Yeah.
Because that's a political movie when you got your action and stunts and everything. But it still maintains that level.
Yeah.
And this is just a valley of what the hell? Action, horror.
This feels like a great concept that just hit regular problems with the screenplay, because I think that's where the movie suffers at its greatest. We talked end to end.
I thought they were gonna have a showdown I thought they were gonna, since we're in Colorado and they're driving a snowdrift, I thought we were gonna have a showdown in a hotel like The Shining.
Oh,
that would have been.
I was thinking snowplow chicken.
That's what happened when I was like, oh my, if we have a showdown in a hotel, I'll go for it, man.
That's fair.
And have a big shootout and western and maybe I should write this.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we have so many people in this movie that are giving, I think, as good as the screenplay allows, and we've got a lot of people working on this film that have good, solid work ethic between cinematography, between music, between editing. There's a lot of people that have done this business for a while, and it's just a movie that screenplay is not up to snuff for them. Yeah, beginning and end, that's the biggest problem that it hits.
And one big thing I have about this problem I wrote down in the notes is no developed female characters in this movie. That is something...
Failing the Bechdel test right there.
It's something we did in the 80s, and you can tell this is from... And when you said it was just written in the 80s, it kind of feels like that. There's really no developed female characters in this movie in Kansas. They cancel it all almost. You know, Lee Army's, my wife's dead, and all that stuff. So
yeah, and we never see or hear from Lacrosse's wife, which would have been a great character moment to write in for a guy that people perceive to be dour and too gloomy. Have him get a call from his wife. Give her a scene or two of, like, on the phone even, where we can develop his relationship to his wife, because that's how he connects with Ermi, is how their wives are with them.
This is overly masculine kind of a movie, which is the reason why I put Jeb Stewart's notes about this. Constantly changing masculinity. Well, you really need to change the masculinity. Yeah. This is a heavily dominated masculinity.
Who's the biggest female character in the movie?
The cashier gets the most lines, and she's the youngest.
I was thinking Allison Smith, who is like with Ted Levine's character in the cop
clerks.
shop.
The females are all clerks.
They're all assistants to people.
Yeah, and we're beyond that. So even if you submit something like that script nowadays, I think the top thing would be develop your female characters a little bit better, and then send it back to me.
Yeah, give me something that doesn't feel so like a guy that doesn't know how to write women. Because it's really not that hard to write women or men. Honestly, I mean, I really have never felt like there's a lot of difference between
George R. Martin proved that. Yeah.
But we get a movie here Die Hard has an interesting female character in John McClane's wife. The Fugitive has a few small female characters. There's not a large presence of female characters in that, but they're there. They pervade into the film. It's just not main character level. But you just see that issue. I didn't notice it until you said it, and now I feel like, wow, does feel like a bigger problem.
Yeah, like Predator. These have some female characters.
See, in Predator, we got one.
I know.
You know, and that's a movie where I think of the time.
And her weapon is she hides that
one.
She's bilingual. That's her big weapon is she hides it, but she's bilingual.
But I think the biggest proof that you could very easily, it's not even so much about developing the female characters as having a little bit more of a diverse cast. What I mean by that is Ted Levine's character could have been a lady. I think
he was the biggest notion. Yeah, I forgot about that.
The biggest notion is that you see the movie Alien. Ripley was written as a man, and they were like, we're just going to cast a woman in there because we can show the world, like, America is not just guys. So, like, if you're making an American movie, throw people in of a wider diversity.
And you bring that up because he's in that movie, but there's an awkward scene of when Dennis Quaid just sits at the table with them too, and he just slides over.
That's true.
And then he just completely ignores him. And then he's like, I'm on camera, what am I going to do? And he just kind of like looks off to distance.
Yeah.
It's kind of like dead scenery almost.
He's like, if I have to go turn on Goodbye Horses right now to get you to pay attention to me, I'll do it. Yeah.
So, have you seen Switchback?
Yeah, let us know in the comments section down below if you remember watching it. It's been a while, and I'm not going to say that the movie's entirely memorable.
Like I said, I haven't seen this since 1997. The only thing that I retained is Arlie Emery is in this, and then Danny Glover wearing that red vest almost looks like Marty McFly's.
Oh, see, I thought he looked like Jim Carrey's character in Aspen in the Dumb and Dumber movie, where it's like that overly like cowboy-looking Colorado.
Yeah, this movie came out after Dumb and Dumber. Yeah, we're going to Colorado. Right? Yeah.
But yeah, let us know in the comments section down below what you thought about Switchback. If you recall the movie, I saw it yesterday, and I'm not sure I recall it. And while you're down there, I guess let us know which other Jeb Stewart scripted film we should cover next. Should we talk The Fugitive? Should we talk Die
Next
Hard?
Kid with Patrick Stewart.
There we go.
Yeah.
Let us know down in the comment section below your thoughts on the film. And while you're down there, drop us a like and a subscribe. It helps us out immensely growing the channel, and it helps you out too, so you never miss episodes of Kyle and Nick on Film when we have new episodes Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. As Nick pointed out before, sacrificing a cup of coffee ain't that tough. You can get rid of your Starbucks, or in our case, Caribou Coffee, and once a month, join up on the Patreon. We have tiers as low as $1 a month, and with that, you get things like Picks with Kyle and Nick. You get some of our Patreon talks that we do, and you also, at $5 and up per month, you get to help pick the movies that we are going to talk about on the show in future episodes. Sounds like a good idea to me.
Yeah.
So, from all of us at Kyle and Nick on Film, you can find my film reviews at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my podcast, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts. And I just want to let you know, if you got a car that you really like and it's an antique, don't kill your favorite auto mechanic that can fix it.
That's fair. Maybe slow down on the roads, too.
Slow down the road,
We're
too.
from
Right?
Minnesota,
Yeah. Don't
we
be in
know
such a
that.
rush. You know the date you're supposed to be there.
Yeah, come on now.